Our final presentation this morning is from OpenGov, and they're going to be talking about the future of connected government is here. Named to the 2014 Forbes 30 Under 30 list, OpenGov Co-founder Nate Levine is a decorated researcher and transparency thought leader. Nate studied engineering at Stanford University, where he also worked for the political science departments, researching and analyzing militarized conflicts. He then co-founded and served as president of California Common Sense, where he established California's first ever data transparency portal and built a brand of research excellence. In 2012, Levine helped co-found OpenGov, where he works today on strategic accounts. Please give Nate a warm round of applause.
Thank you, everybody. It's an honor to be here in front of you, and really appreciate you taking the time to listen to these amazing presentations. I've learned a lot already and hope to share a little bit about what we're doing. And I'm thrilled to talk to you about what we see as the future of connected government. So I'll start with a little bit of my background and personal experience in this area. Back in 2009, I was a researcher at Stanford, and I was focused on trying to figure out how governments across the state of California were going to handle the pressures of the Great Recession. Right, this was a time when the state government in California was in a budget crisis, and local governments were feeling that pain, the pain of greater demand for services, while at the same time revenue streams were drying up. So we saw this world, and being an engineer, I wanted to take a data-centric approach to trying to answer that question. So I, along with some of my colleagues, we picked up the phone, and we started calling cities and counties across the state. And we would say, please send us all your information. And particularly, we're interested in your financial information. We want to know, where is your money coming from and where is it going? So we might talk to a city manager, for example, and say, hey, can you send us that detail? Just get us a spreadsheet, whatever it is. We want to know, where every dollar came from, where it went, by department, by program, by category. And most of the time, they would say, sounds great, but I don't have that, and I don't know how to get that to you. I have this summary, I have this little document of my spending, and I have maybe a summary of each department, but I don't have that type of detail. If you want that, you have to talk to my finance director or my budget director. We'd say, okay. So we'd call the finance director, and we'd actually then hear the same thing. And it surprised us, but a lot of the time we'd hear, I don't have that either. It's in my accounting system, and if you want that, we can get it to you, but I'm going to have an analyst go and do a research project and compile it and clean it, and then maybe in a couple weeks we can send it to you. So that surprised us. When I tell this story to people in government, it's usually not that surprising. But to us, it was very interesting that there were so many disconnects in that chain, right? That you had this really, really core data set, the finances of government, and the people running the organization didn't have great insight into it. So we started OpenGov with the idea of enabling connected government and bringing that information to the people that need it every day. So why is this important? Well, it's important because there are many stakeholders in a government, and there are many stakeholders in the act of governing, and they all benefit when a government is more connected. You, of course, have the public, right? The public wants to understand, where is their tax money going? What services am I getting? How is my government operating and functioning? And we care about that so that we can be better voters. The press, the media, obviously benefits from this, right? If information is more readily available, they can get a clearer understanding of how governments are operating and tell a better narrative and tell the right story and inform their audiences. Ratings agencies, for example, benefit because their job is to get a very detailed and nuanced understanding of what a government does every day. And that's much easier if that information is readily available, and they'll be able to reward governments for the hard work that they're doing. And then, of course, governments themselves benefit when all of these groups benefit, right? Because if you have all of these different parts functioning better together, collaborating and sharing information, everybody's lives are easier. Now, the world today is not yet one of complete connectedness. There are many silos in government and in many organizations. I already mentioned financial information. That's one silo, but there are a lot. Every department has data and systems, right? City of Palo Alto, where I live, I think they have about 300 systems across the city, and that's not a huge city. And each of those systems has its own data, right? So you have a police department with crime data, and you have a public works department with infrastructure and traffic data, and then you have demographic data and weather data scattered all over the place. And these data sets have value, but they don't talk to each other. So if I'm sitting on top of that data, if I'm that city manager again, or I'm the mayor, I don't understand how these pieces all fit together and how they work and how everything's operating. I have to go and get information piecemeal one at a time across the year and try and make decisions from that. And the other problem is how this information is made available and presented. And a lot of the time it's static, right? You might run a report and hang it on a website. The last presentation they were talking about spreadsheets in the cloud. You see that a lot. You see the financial information presented in a book, a PDF that might be hundreds or thousands of pages long. And for most people, that's just not an accessible format. So governments, and especially leading governments, are seeing this, and they're moving towards this idea of a connected government. And some of the new technologies we're seeing are really driving this. Electric vehicles are one very interesting example, right? So you had a world for a long time where revenue at the state level for road infrastructure comes from gas taxes, and that's still where a lot of it comes from. But as electric vehicles become more prominent and more prevalent, you now lose that revenue, right? They're not paying for gas, and the state's not getting that revenue. So states are trying to figure out how do we adapt to that new situation, and the right answer is probably to charge people based on how much they're driving. But how do you get that type of information? Well, you need some connection to the vehicles now. And so there are some companies and there are some states starting to think about that, but it's driving them towards this model of connected operation. And then companies like OpenGov are trying to help with that as well. There are a lot of organizations trying to figure out how do we take the information from these silos and how do we put it online and how do we connect it to other data sets so that anybody can access it quickly and easily. And again, sensors are showing up everywhere now. We're putting sensors in our roads to track the cars driving on it. We're putting sensors in water supplies to track water levels and water usage. We're moving to smart electrical grids so we can figure out who's using electricity and when and how and for what. And as we move into this world, it's enabling a new type of government. On the internal side, it's allowing managers to see how much money do I have left in my budget on a daily basis and see problems before they arise and adapt to them. It's allowing executives to see what are the performance measures across my organization. How are my programs operating? Are they hitting their goals? Are they not? It's letting them respond to emergencies and crises quicker, and it's allowing them to plan better for the future. They can look around the corner and start thinking instead of just for the next week or month, years and years ahead. And then, of course, there's an external component to connected government, and without the internal and external components, it doesn't really work, because you need to engage a lot of stakeholders in governing. So the public, again, needs to be engaged, and actually connections between governments are starting to become possible as well. As more of this information moves online, you can start to allow governments to not just see their data, but data from neighbors and other similar governments across the world. That's one thing we're focused on at OpenGov. We're trying to figure out how do we take all this financial information and allow for apples-to-apples comparisons. If I'm running a police department in my city, I want to see what are my neighbors doing, how are they running their police departments, what are their crime rates, and what can I be doing better? And then if I'm doing something well, how do I share that so other governments can learn from that example? So I wanted to just share a couple examples of connected governments today. One is the city of Simi Valley in Ventura County. In 2012, the city council asked the city manager, to be more transparent, to make more information available in more accessible formats online. And so they did. They're an OpenGov partner, and they've put all of their finances online for the last 5-6 years, so you can see every dollar, where it's coming from, where it's going at many levels of detail. And this has benefited them in a couple of ways immediately. In 2014, the city went to refinance a bond. And Standard & Poor's, when they came in to give them a rating, gave them a AAA credit rating, which was historic for the city. They'd never gotten a rating that high. And there were many reasons, but one of the reasons was the ease of accessing this financial information. Standard & Poor's told them the fact that they could go and find all of this data right away and answer their own questions quickly was very appealing and demonstrated how well the city was running its finances. And just the fact that they were able and willing to put this information online demonstrated that it was a well-run organization. And they've also benefited from that connection with the community. They've seen tens of thousands of dollars saved every year responding to public records requests. So where historically they would have had to pick up the phone and answer a question, send a fax, send an email, something like that. Residents can go and find what they're looking for right away, and it's saving hundreds and hundreds of hours of time as well. Show another example here. I'm going to jump to, I can pull it up, the city of Stanton, California, down in Orange County. Again, another OpenGov partner who has embraced this idea of transparency and connectedness around financial information. And there's some interesting stories there as well. So if we go ahead and actually pull up their financial data here, we'll see that they've, one, created this narrative around the finances, and then given all their residents the option to jump in and look directly at all of the data. So the city of Stanton is interesting because a few years ago, they saw millions of dollars of state development funds dry up. They were getting a lot of funds from the state to pay for various projects. Those funds disappeared, and it left the city with a deficit. And so in order to fill that deficit, they went out to the community and they said, we need to raise a tax. Or at least we propose that we raise a tax on sales to fund various operations across the city. So they ended up getting approval for this, they raised the tax, and it helped fill that gap by bringing in millions of dollars to the state. Very quickly, though, the public got a little bit concerned because they saw the city building a new park with some of this money, or at least they thought it was coming from this money. And there was some public outcry around this. Well, what the public didn't realize was the funding for that park was coming from a series of special revenue funds tied to grants, and it actually wasn't coming from this new tax that they had raised. But again, it's very hard to understand that if you don't have a nuanced understanding of government finance and accounting. It's hard to look at a budget book and get that understanding. And so the city turned to OpenGov as a partner to put that information online and to try and tell that narrative and story in a much better way. And it's helped them achieve that goal. It's helped them engage with the public. And now going forward, there's a much greater trust and bond. I was hoping to show it. It seems like the Wi-Fi on this laptop has died on me, so I won't have a chance to do that. But I encourage you to go to OpenGov.com, and you can see this and many other examples. And thank you so much.